Welcome to Not Another Greek History Podcast, the podcast that aims to be exactly what it says. I'm your host, Onúfiros Dovletis, and together we'll discover the not-so-frequently told stories of Greece's history that will change the way you view things forever. I'm very excited about this episode. I always say that death has played a huge part in human history, and many of the monuments that we know all around the world have to do with death, whether that is the pyramids in Egypt, or the Taj Mahal in India, or the magnificent sculptures that we see in Greek museums, or in other museums around the world, unfortunately, because they might have been pillaged from Greece. Okay, yes, I'm in a mood. So, I've lit my candle, and I would suggest you do the same. Why not? And I'm ready to talk to you about death in ancient Greece. Funerals back then were private ceremonies that didn't really require priests to be present. Before the funeral, the dead would be mourned at home, which is something that we still do, at least in Greece. I'm not sure what you do at home. Feel free, by the way, of course, to send me a message and tell me about that. And the feet of the dead would be facing the door because they believed that the dead would walk out the house. The body was buried 2 days later. I don't know if you can guess why, if you can think about this. Because they wanted to allow enough time for any signs of wrongdoing to show. Unmarried men and women were buried with wedding clothes, again, like what we still do today in Greece. But those girls were buried even with toys because they were considered as children. Even though girls could marry even at the age of 12 to 14, they were considered adults once they got married. Obviously, for everyday people, they made simple graves, but way back when, say in the 15th century BC, when we had several kings around Greece, they made some pretty impressive tombs. The word tomb itself comes from the Greek word timvos. Timvos. It has an M and a V. That's why in English it has a B, but for some reason you don't pronounce it. It's a thing in English to not pronounce the B after the M. That's why you say bomb. Bomb. You don't say bomb. Or tomb. You don't say tomb. As it should be, because it comes from Greek. Such tomb was the one in a place called Mykines, which you pronounce Mycenae, and it's called the tomb of Atreus. It actually was the biggest dome in the world for the next more or less 1500 years. Not bad. And it's still standing intact to this day. So we're talking about 3,500 years later. Really not bad. And it's a dome. It's not a solid building, but it's covered. So it looks like a hill, practically. You need to go near and go in it to actually see it. And it has, by the way, one of the biggest stones, monolithic stones ever used in the history of mankind, which weighs over 120 tons. This is very impressive. Keep in mind, because you might be more familiar with that one, Stonehenge, like those stones weigh roughly 30 tons each, the biggest ones, I think. Here we're talking about 4 times that weight, and it's still standing. That would be, of course, in the kingdom of Agamemnon. That's Mycenae, as we said. Agamemnon was the legendary man in charge of the Greek army during the Trojan War. If you've seen the movie Troy, you would see that he was always in some conflict with Achilles, Brad Pitt. And keep in mind that he didn't die in the war like the movie shows. He came back to be murdered by his wife, as you should. Atreus, by the way, was the father of Agamemnon, and that was the name of the tomb that I told you about. Such tombs were also made by the Macedonians, the northern Greeks, about 1,000 years later though. And one such tomb would be the tomb of Philip II, as it has been identified. Although there are scholars who believe that it could be even the tomb of Alexander the Great, his son. It's also the location of the palace where Alexander grew up in, and that part of the site just opened in January 2024, so practically now it's the beginning of February, it's like a month ago. That's why I'm telling you, This is a brand new site that just opened in Greece. And speaking of Alexander, I would be very cautious because there is a new Netflix documentary that came out about him. So I'll be very cautious with such documentaries made by Netflix, at least. Because you might remember the one also about the Black Cleopatra, which was completely inaccurate, since she was Greek, and from Macedonia specifically, by the way, so she was white. So for me that's really funny, because it comes as a surprise for a lot of people when I tell them that Cleopatra was the queen of Egypt. Cleopatra, though, was not Egyptian. She was Greek, so she wasn't black for sure. So all these places that I mentioned are located near Mount Olympus. Of course, that would be the home of the 12 gods of ancient Greece. And that is located about 5 hours from Athens, to give you an idea about the distance. And for you to think about what you could do when you travel to Greece, and how much time you might need to allow yourselves to visit places. These are really important places that I'm telling you about. The tomb of Philip, the palace of Alexander the Great, and all these places. And that's nowhere near Athens. You need time for this. It's close to Meteora. A lot of people know Meteora, those big rocks with monasteries on the top. And I'm also telling you that Mount Olympus specifically is about 5 hours from Athens, because that kind of answers the question that a lot of people ask me, and I think it's really, really funny, but I try not to show it. I hope I do it. When we're standing on the Acropolis in Athens and people ask me, because we have a lot of mountains all around Athens, so people ask me, can we see Olympus from here? And I'm like, no, we can't. Apart from burials, cremation was another common practice. In the end, they put the ashes in a clay or metallic vase. Keep in mind that because the funeral pyre never reached today's temperatures, in the end, they actually had remains to put in the vases, and not ashes like what I see in the movies that people might have in the United States and in other places. By the way, until recently, Greece didn't have any crematoriums. Now we have one outside of Athens. It's not even in Athens. And if you are cremated, there will be no priest present. That's because the Orthodox Church doesn't allow it. Jesus wasn't cremated. As simple as that. The belief then was that unburied people would never rest, and they would be like zombies practically. And that's why there was a law to bury anyone that you found. Let's say you're walking on the beach and you just find a dead body. Someone drowned in the sea, and they just ended up on the shore. You would have to bury them, or if not bury them properly, you would have to do some kind of ceremony for them. And in ancient Greek theater, burials were mentioned quite frequently. And keep in mind, theater, of course, was a huge way back then to carry messages to the people. For example, it's mentioned by Electra, you say in English, Electra, in the tragedy which has her name, when she visits her father's grave to make some libations, some offerings, because back then they used to pour something into the grave, olive oil. For example, she sees a lock of hair, which she thinks could be her brother's, whom she hasn't seen in many years, which means he's back. This shows, by the way, that it was a custom for them, first of all, to wear their hair long, and second, to cut it when somebody died. I'm just saying that because when we see male statues in the museums of Greece, they have long hair. And people always ask me if it represents a wig. And I always tell them that that was the fashion back then. And that it wasn't like Egypt where people wore wigs. Men in Greece had long hair and braids, also like women. The 1962 Greek film about Electra, by the way, got nominated for Best Foreign Language Film at the Oscars, and it was directed by the director of Zorba the Greek. And that was made 2 years later, in 1964. In the 60s, the Oscars were really, really fond of Greece. So let's continue with theater and see what happens in another tragedy. The whole thing with the unburied people, because it was really about that, becomes a huge matter of debate in the tragedy Antigone. Antigone, you say in English, Antigone in Greek. That was written by Sophocles, maybe around 441 BC. 441 BC. We're talking about roughly 2,500 years ago. That is the golden age of Greek theater. So, long story short, Oedipus, the famous one, the one that you've heard of, the original mother father, as t-shirts that you find around Athens say, he married his own mother without any one of them knowing it though, okay? So don't judge. They had 4 children. They couldn't just have 1 or 2. They had 4 children, 2 girls and 2 boys. After many years, they find out the mother kills herself. Oedipus leaves the city of Thebes. It's a city near Athens. And then the 2 boys are supposed to rule, taking turns. But one obviously won't let go of the throne, so the other one attacks. They end up killing each other, of course. So eventually, their uncle becomes the king, and he forbids anyone to bury the brother that attacked the city, because he was, of course, a sinner. That was the idea. So this what triggers Antigone, who defies the king's orders, as you should. She tries to bury her brother, and then all hell breaks loose, as if it hadn't already. That was one crazy family, for sure. A lot of issues here. And keep in mind that Antigone was even engaged to the son of the king. Ta-da! By the way, due to this play's intense political message, because we have practically, it's a civilian going against the orders of the king and talking about what laws are significant, divine laws, human laws, family laws, and all that. This play has been very popular. In Greece, at least, I think it must be by far the most performed tragedy. It has been adapted all over the world, and of course it has been adapted many times into films. I talked about performances, by the way, earlier. I haven't had the chance to perform in Antigone, but I have performed in Electra, which was very, very, very interesting. A known adaptation of Antigone is a Greek film from 1961. So you see, the 60s were really prolific for films that have to do with tragedies especially. And that featured the actress Irini Papa as Antigone. Irini Papa became known abroad as Irene Papas. Irini Papa. She was one of the biggest stars of the time, by the way. And the movie also got nominated, but at the Golden Globes this time. Sophocles, 2,500 years ago, won with this play at the theatrical contest that was held below the Acropolis of Athens in the theater of Dionysos, the god of wine. And that would be the first theater in the world. From the 5th century BC, Athens bans luxurious funerals and professional mourners, which was a thing and could still be in some parts of Greece. Personally, I have witnessed in the funeral of a friend of mine who died when we were 25, some women that didn't seem to be part of the family who were mourning, and they were screaming, and it was pretty weird and kind of uncomfortable in a way, whereas the mother herself was protesting against that. She didn't want this in her son's funeral. Anyway, that's why back then no women under 60 who were not family took part in the funerals, because they could be loud since they were relatively young, so they can make more noise. And you might think, okay, so what? Who would stop them? There were even special policemen making sure that they were quiet. These people really, really meant it. And also, the funeral began in the dark, before sunrise, and of course in silence, as we said. And don't forget that the cemetery would have been at the outskirts of the city. It wasn't around the houses, it wasn't in some neighborhood. So this practically means that the procession in some cases would have to go through the entire city to get to some cemetery. So imagine if there was a lot of unrest caused by the funeral. They didn't want this. The idea is for this unsettling event to go unnoticed, especially at those times when death happened more easily. But also keep in mind that men specifically died more frequently because of the wars. So there would have always been some unrest caused in the city because of these funerals. So they don't want this. So no suffering was supposed to be displayed in public, even when it comes to the funerary monuments that depicted the deceased. Those wonderful sculptures that one can see in museums all around Greece, especially, for example, the National Archaeological Museum in Athens, half of which I think might be full of death sculptures. They depict the dead along with the living sometimes, which is quite an interesting concept, as if they're still alive. But there is no scenes of drama with mourning, screaming, and stuff like that. In most cases, I would say if you didn't know, you couldn't even guess that you're looking at a farewell scene. We said that there were plenty of wars, so soldiers' burials were a different category. Soldiers of Athens were usually buried together in the city in a mass grave and not on the battlefield, or not in separate graves so much. Of course, we have that sometimes, but usually they buried them together in a mass grave. We know, for example, that was a special privilege for the men who died at the Battle of Marathon. Not only were they buried in a mass grave, but at the battlefield itself, which we can still visit to this day. They were the men who fought against the Persians during their first invasion in Greece in 490 BC. The Athenians just made a very plain mound, a small hill practically, that we can still see until now. Accordingly, we know that a burial mound was also made by the Macedonians when they defeated Athens and other southern Greeks at the Battle of Cheronia. Cheronia is very close to Thebes, where we said Oedipus and Antigone lived. The Athenians were defeated by Philip and Alexander the Great, so we're talking about the 4th century BC now. We're talking about maybe about 150 years after the Battle of Marathon. And of course, the Macedonian soldiers were buried along with some of their military equipment, but didn't allow this for the enemy soldiers, which means they dishonored the dead soldiers of the enemy by doing that. Sleep is a short death, and death is a long sleep. That's why we know from an ancient Greek story that 2 sons had done something really important for their mother, and she asked the gods to reward them. They went to bed and never woke up again, so the sleep went on for a very long time. Their statues are now in the Museum of Delphi, that's Delphi in English, and they have been immortalized young and beautiful, as the song says. Practically, a peaceful death at a young age was a blessing. That's why when the mother asked for a reward, the gods practically killed them. That was the gift. And I saved the best for last. The dead, we said, because this whole thing was a blessing, the dead were considered blessed. And in Greek, the word for this is makari. Makari. Keep this word in mind. To honor the dead, as we do to this day, they also had a meal after the funeral. From the word makari, the blessed, comes the word macaroni, some kind, of course, of barley-based pasta dish. So, this is the moment when I say that when it comes to food and coffee, don't always take people's word very easily as to who made what, because sometimes you just can't know. I always tell tourists who think that pasta came from Italy, that pasta is the simplest thing to make, and it was customary in Greece, in China, and in some other places, of course. But the word macaroni itself is Greek, and as is the word pasta as well, which means something flat. And another flat thing that is quite simple to make and to come up with is a kind of dough with stuff on it. In Greek, this is called pita, and in Italian, it is called pizza. Pita and pizza are obviously the same word with some different letters. Instead of a T, it's a Z. I always say that it's all about marketing and who became known for what. That goes also for coffee, but that's gonna be a different episode. Thank you all for joining me on this amazing journey through history. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. And please share. Until next time, this is Onufrios Dovletis signing off from Not Another Greek History Podcast.